The .45 ACP has been trusted for over a century, earning a reputation as one of the hardest-hitting pistol rounds ever made. It's the cartridge of choice for the legendary 1911, and it's been on battlefields, in police holsters, and even in the hands of everyday carriers who swear by its stopping power. But while most gun owners know the basics, there's a whole lot more to this round than meets the eye. Its history is packed with surprises, its performance has been pushed to unexpected limits, and some of the guns that have fired it, well, let's just say they aren't what you'd expect. There are forgotten firearms chambered for it, strange modifications that changed how it was used, and even a few missteps from gun makers who tried and failed to reinvent it. In this video, we're taking a deep dive into the world of the .45 ACP, its origins, its wildest adaptations, and the things most shooters don't know about it. If you think you know everything about this classic round, stick around, because you just might be in for a surprise. American troops found out the hard way that their standard .38 long Colt revolvers weren't getting the job done against Moro warriors in the Philippine-American War. These men charged into battle with fearless determination. The .38 long Colt's lack of stopping power forced the U.S. Army to look for something with more punch, leading to the birth of the .45 ACP and not long after, the adoption of the M1911 pistol in 1911. It was a pivotal move that changed American sidearms for good. The story comes full circle during World War II, when the U.S. once again supplied Filipino fighters with .45 ACP chambered pistols to use against Japanese invaders. It must have felt like poetic justice, providing the very cartridge that originated because of earlier battles in that region. Filipino guerrillas put the .45 ACP to work, proving it was still potent decades after its debut. By then, the .45 ACP had already earned a reputation for stopping threats fast, especially at close quarters. If you ever wonder why people still love the .45, this early history sheds plenty of light on its enduring appeal. Even today, you'll find plenty of folks who'd rather trust a .45 ACP over smaller calibers, citing that legacy of reliable stopping power. From trenches and jungles to city streets, it's proven itself time and again. You might be surprised to learn that the .45 ACP almost became a dedicated revolver cartridge. When the U.S. ramped up for World War I, there simply weren't enough M1911 pistols to meet demand. So the Army asked Colt and Smith & Wesson to adapt some of their large-frame revolvers to use .45 ACP ammo. That move gave us the M1917 revolvers, which went on to carve out their own place in history. The challenge was that .45 ACP is rimless, yet revolvers normally rely on a rimmed cartridge for head spacing and extraction. The solution came in the form of half-moon clips, little metal devices holding 3 rounds apiece, so the cartridges sat securely in the cylinder and could be ejected together. Joseph Wesson at Smith & Wesson came up with the half-moon clip idea and let Colt use it for free, which helped both companies get these guns to the front lines quickly. Both versions of the M1917 served through multiple conflicts, from World War I and II all the way to the Korean War and beyond, including with some tunnel rats in Vietnam. These big revolvers were known for their solid construction and for taking advantage of the .45 ACP's heavy bullet. Colt fans and S&W aficionados each had their preferences, but both guns did the job. Eventually, the .45 auto rim cartridge arrived, featuring a proper rim so shooters didn't have to fiddle with half-moon clips. Long after the war, surplus M1917s and .45 auto rim ammo found homes with civilians, and some folks still enjoy shooting these historical revolvers today. There are shooters out there who claim the .45 ACP kicks like a mule, but the truth is more nuanced. Sure, it has more recoil than a 9mm, yet many shooters find it quite manageable. One big factor is that the .45 ACP typically operates at lower pressure and velocity than cartridges like the 10mm or .357 Magnum. A standard .45 ACP load might push a 230-grain bullet at around 830 feet per second, while a 10mm can send a 180-grain bullet well past 1,200 feet per second. That extra speed in hotter rounds usually translates to snappier recoil. Gun design matters too. A lower bore axis reduces muzzle flip, and a heavier frame soaks up more of the backward thrust. Take the classic 1911, it weighs enough to mellow the recoil considerably. Stance and grip also play a part. Leaning forward and locking your wrists goes a long way toward taming the push. At the end of the day, recoil is a personal thing. What rattles one shooter might barely register with another, especially if they're used to bigger calibers. If you haven't tried it, you might be surprised how gentle that big bore can feel in the right pistol. You might think the 45 ACP is stuck with one formula, but over the years, several higher pressure variants have cranked up its horsepower. The 45 Super keeps the same overall dimensions but uses stronger brass and higher pressures for more velocity. The 460 Roland stretches the case a bit and rivals certain Magnum revolvers in raw power. Glock tried its own spin with the 45 GAP, shortening the case to fit smaller frames, while the 451 Detonix Magnum lengthens it and turns up the pressure dial even further. These specialized versions highlight just how adaptable the 45 ACP can be when you're looking for more speed or a more compact platform. Not all of them became mainstream, but they show that the basic 45 ACP design can handle a surprising range of power levels. Whether you're looking for Magnum-like oomph or a compact carry option, there's a hot-rodded 45 variant that just might scratch that itch. Glock partnered with Speer in 2003 to introduce the 45 GAP, hoping to match 45 ACP performance in a shorter case. This new cartridge made it possible to shrink grip dimensions to roughly the same size as Glock's 9mm and 40 models, giving shooters with smaller hands the chance to shoot a 45 caliber round more comfortably. Some law enforcement agencies picked it up early on, thinking it offered an ideal balance of stopping power and ergonomics. That initial buzz never really expanded beyond a niche crowd. Ammo availability and cost were sticking points, and many shooters just stuck with the classic 45 ACP, especially once manufacturers found ways to slim down 45 frames. Over time, most of the agencies that went with 45 GAP switched back to more common calibers for simplicity's sake. These days, you'll still find 45 GAP here and there, but it remains a specialty cartridge rather than a mainstream success. It's a reminder that sometimes the most successful cartridges are the ones that have been around longest, especially when shooters are already comfortable with them. It's common knowledge that the 45 ACP was the first cartridge the Thompson submachine gun, aka the Tommy gun, was chambered for John T. Thompson envisioned it as a trench broom in World War I, and chambering it in 45 ACP gave it a powerful punch at close range. The Tommy gun eventually became an icon, used by both gangsters during Prohibition and American forces in World War II. It was expensive and heavy though, which pushed the military to look for cheaper alternatives, leading to the M3 grease gun, another SMG built from the ground up with the 45 ACP in mind. It had a slower rate of fire and a simpler build. Troops liked how compact it was, especially in the cramped quarters of tanks and other vehicles. Several other submachine guns have also taken advantage of the 45 ACP's hitting power. The MAC-10, introduced in the 1970s, was famously compact with a blisteringly fast rate of fire. Then came the Chris Vector, which uses a clever recoil system to direct the kick downward, helping you stay on target when firing multiple rounds of 45 in quick bursts. Each of these guns relies on the 45's heavy bullet to deliver serious impact in tight engagements. From back alleys during Prohibition to modern battlefields, these iconic 45 caliber subguns have left their mark on firearms history, and they still fascinate gun enthusiasts around the world. If you've never reloaded your own ammo, you've probably never heard about the 45 ACP's popularity among handloaders. Its relatively low operating pressure means brass can be reused multiple times before it becomes unreliable, so you get more mileage out of each case. The straight-walled, rimless design also makes resizing less of a hassle, and it feeds smoothly in semi-automatics. Flexibility is another big draw. Bullet weights can range from lighter pills around 155 grains to the hefty 230 grain standard. Whether you're crafting practice rounds or home defense loads, you have loads of room for experimentation. Subsonic performance is another plus. Many 45 ACP factory loads keep those 230 grain bullets under the speed of sound, which means less crack when you shoot suppressed. If you like tinkering, whether it's dialing in the right powder charge or fine-tuning recoil, this cartridge has you covered. Once you start reloading 45, you might find yourself hooked on the endless possibilities it brings to the table. During the Vietnam War, the tunnel rats had a job that would make most of us sweat just thinking about it. They crawled through cramped, booby-trapped tunnels used by the Viet Cong, never sure what waited around the next bend. Many carried the standard issue M1911-45. Unfortunately, firing that big round in such a confined space left their ears ringing and their night vision ruined by muzzle flash. Some switched to suppressed .38 special revolvers or even suppressed .22 pistols because the lower noise and flash helped them stay oriented. It's easy to see why. Blasting away with a .45 in a tight tunnel is disorienting and the concussion can be overwhelming. The quieter alternatives reduce the chance of being stunned by your own gunfire, though not everyone could get their hands on such gear. Some stuck with the .45 anyway, and others relied on knives depending on what they had and what they preferred. It was a harsh environment with no margin for error, and every shot and every weapon choice could mean the difference between life and death. You might be surprised to learn the .45 ACP also came in a shotshell version, often called rat shot or snake shot. Manufacturers designed these rounds so you could tackle small pests or snakes at very close range without relying on a solid bullet. They feature small lead shot enclosed in a plastic capsule shaped like a bullet, which shatters on firing. That spreads the pellets, making them more effective against tiny targets while reducing the risk of ricochets. These shot shells don't penetrate deeply and have a short effective range, so they're less likely to damage property or injure bystanders in tight spaces like barns or sheds. The only catch is that not all semi-automatic pistols will cycle them reliably, so you'd need to test a few rounds first. They won't replace your standard defensive ammunition, but they're an interesting option if you're dealing with snakes or rodents. For dedicated shooters, it's just another way the .45 ACP proves its versatility, even if it might seem a little unconventional. You might picture the .45 ACP in handguns or submachine guns, but there have also been rifles and carbines chambered for this cartridge. One well-known example is the Marlin Camp carbine, made from the mid-1980s to the late 1990s. It came in both 9mm and .45 ACP, but the .45 version was especially appealing since it could use standard 1911 magazines. It was a simple blowback design with a short barrel, a great choice for plinking or just an all-around utility gun. Some enthusiasts took the idea a step further with custom conversions, such as modifying a Marlin 1894 lever-action rifle to feed .45 ACP. That kind of project isn't for everyone. It involves rechambering the barrel and tweaking the action to handle rimless cartridges. But it's a testament to how versatile the .45 ACP can be. If you want the mild recoil and affordability of a pistol round in a platform that's steadier and more accurate, a .45 ACP carbine is an intriguing option. It's not as widespread as other setups, yet there's real charm in sending a .45 slug downrange from a shoulder-fired rifle. If you happen to run across one of these rifles at a local shop or gun show, it's worth a closer look for the novelty alone. And that's a wrap for this one. The .45 ACP has had one hell of a ride. From the trenches to the streets, powering classics like the 1911, the Tommy gun, and even some unexpected rifles. Some versions cranked up the power to magnum levels, while others tried and flopped at making it smaller. Know something about this cartridge that we don't? Drop them in the comments. And while you're at it, hit that like button, share this with your fellow gun guys, subscribe for more, and ring that bell so you never miss a video. See you in the next one.